Hello, everybody. Please have your seats. We're going to be talking about Trussville in 20 minutes. Well, we'll take about 20 minutes to tell you about Trussville, and I promise not to take up the entire 20 minutes. But anyway, my name is Dennis Lesley. I'm with the Trussville Historical Board and Historical Society, and I love history. Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of Trussville that I love. Where you're sitting right now used to be a place called the Trussville Furnace, the iron furnace. Back in the late 1800s, a little thing that happened that was called the Birmingham Iron Boom. There was a group of local businessmen who wanted to find a place where they might replicate the industrial success of Birmingham, and they found it right here in Trussville. Why Trussville, you might ask? Well, I said, Trussville had three things that were critical to iron making. Anybody know what that might be? One, they had local raw materials. They could get a seam of red hematite iron ore had been found just down the road. The couple other things that are needed is limestone and coal. They're all here. Second thing another thing that was needed was an abundant water supply. Well, we have the Cahaba River. I mean, if you ask me, the Cahaba River built Trussville. With our little creek down here, Trussville I don't think it would be what it is today. And three, Trussville had direct railroad access. The Alabama-Chattanooga Railroad had just been completed through Trussville in 1870. Seems like a long time ago. And all they had to do was build a small rail spur to the furnace from the existing line. Today, that railroad, we call it Norfolk Southern. Unless, of course, you're stuck at a crossing behind a stopped train, then you might call it, well, something else. Anyway, that group of businessmen, the Trussville Coal and Iron Company, built a little furnace operation not far from where we're sitting right now. And in 1888, they blew it in. That's furnace talk for they cranked that baby up. In fact, the person who lit the furnace, yes. Let's do that. There we go. There's the furnace. In fact, when they lit that furnace, it was lit by a little girl. Her name was Janie Hogsett. So anyway, what does an iron furnace do? They make iron, of course, and that's pretty useful. And iron is one of the raw materials that's needed to make steel. In fact, the Trussville furnace made pig iron. You know what pig iron? You've heard of pig iron. Some people don't know why they call it pig iron. It's because when they're pouring the molten iron into the sand molds, it looks like little pigs feeding off their mother. So that's why they called it pig iron. And that's how they formed that in that fashion. They formed iron into a transportable form of iron that could be transported that way, and they would send it to people who needed it for steel or cast iron or what other purposes. Somehow, Trussville Furnace managed to make some really high quality pig iron that was high in demand. The investors were so excited, they started making plans to build another furnace here in Trussville. And they wanted to turn this little community into another Birmingham, a brand new industrial city. Everybody was so hyped that even the Birmingham Mineral Railroad, the rail line that served all the furnaces and mines in the area, expanded the line to here in Trussville. It came right down here, down Parkway Drive. But anyway, you know, so finally, Trussville all of a sudden had two railroads in town. But you know what? One thing they didn't see coming, the bottom dropped out of the pig iron market. At a time known as the Panic of 1893, and the furnace had to shut down. Now, shutting down a furnace like this, once you start making molten iron for casting, you have to run the furnace 24/7. The furnace workers work 12-hour shifts. And when you shut down or blow out a furnace, all the molten iron that's in the system solidifies. It clogs every channel that it runs through. restarting a furnace that's been shut down, sometimes they have to dynamite to get the old solidified iron out. But anyway, there's numerous reasons that furnaces shut down. There's a cost and supply of raw materials, fluctuating price and demand for pig iron, company bankruptcies, you name it. But back then, it was not uncommon that when a furnace restarted, parts of it had to be rebuilt because some of them they had to, let's say it was dynamited or destroyed or whatever. A lot of times when a furnace restarted, it was usually it was quite often under a new owner. Trussville was no exception. Over the years, Trussville furnace had 7 different owners. And the furnace was rebuilt about that many times. But a furnace complex is more than just a single structure where iron is smelted. It has a tall stack with smoke coming out. Blast furnace, it has what they call a hearth, of course, where the big show happens. But they usually have a casting shed, a stock house, a charging tower. There's pumps and boilers and coal bins and coal washers. And there's coke ovens. Now, the biggest part of many furnace operations is what they call the coke oven battery. Where we're sitting right now was part of the coke oven battery for the Trussville furnace. And the thing about it is, the coke iron furnace here in the later years of the Trussville furnace was, they had 300 coke ovens. And in fact, you can see these are the coke ovens right here. Right there. And what the coke ovens do, they pour coal into them, and they're transformed through heat into a usable fuel for the iron making process. It's called, it's made into coke. But anyway, I'll just let you know, now this right here was the furnace hearth. This part with a tall stack. And these smaller stacks, they were the hot air stoves. This is where all the raw materials were fed. That was fed into the oven. This was the charging shed. This is over here was the casting shed where the molten iron was poured into sand molds. Now, if you look right now, these coke ovens expanded, went on down here in the foreground. We're just seeing the back part of it. This is, I can't tell you how many there are, but now this section of the furnace, a lot of people are told that the furnace was right where the school, over here where the school is today. This part of the furnace was in the old football stadium. This is alongside, right behind this complex would be Cherokee Drive today. There was in fact, let's see, I believe that this picture was probably made, probably taken from the train. Because a train used to come around, it came up Parkway, where Parkway is, about where the library is. It turned in. Today it would go behind the school, between the school and the Cahaba River, and then it turned and came up. It came up Cherokee. In fact, Cherokee Drive, I believe to be an old railroad grade. So if you see, the iron furnace is still very visible in the landscape today. The Masonic Park down here, if you ever go down to Masonic Park, you'll see it looks like a big basin. It used to be a big basin. I think that the Masonic Park, that little depression there in the middle of the walking track, used to be the holding pond from the Trussville furnace. All the water that was drawn, that they drew water from the from the Cahaba River for whatever uses that the Trussville furnace had. And then when they were through with it, they discharged it down into the holding basin down here in the Masonic Park, and eventually discharged it back into the Cahaba River after it had cooled off. But anyway, after many years of operating under various owners in various forms, one of the owners tried to blow the furnace in 1918 to sell pig iron to the U.S. government that needed steel for a world war. But you know, eventually that world war ended, and so did the iron making process at Trussville Furnace. That furnace was blown out for the last time in 1919, and after years of abandonment and decay, the Trussville furnace was demolished in 1933. Today, this is what you might find of the leftover of the Trussville furnace. This is near the dog park and just off of Cherokee Drive. There's just a large mass of old concrete there, which I believe to be part of a foundation of one of the structures. Well, anyway, I hope you learned something today, and that way you can go down and see it. Like I said, it's right down by the dog park.